Folks, welcome to Junkyard Theory, and we've got the amazing Lou Taylor Pucci on the show tonight.
How's it
Lou, how's it
going? Ayubo one.
Ayubowan.
Ayubo one.
Man, I've been trying to get you on the show for quite a while, and it's amazing to finally have you here. I was introduced to your work through Spring, which still happens to be like my favorite Lovecraftian horror movie.
Oh yeah.
And then I saw Evil Dead, the 2013 remake / reboot of Sam Raimi's, popular horror franchise.
Amazing.
And you literally summon demons. And today you're here looking like Jesus, so hopefully you can exorcise the demons on the show. So.
Yes. Well, it's the furthering of Eric's character. After Eric died, he then battled the Balrog and became a Jesus figure, like a white Gandalf type character. So that's where I am now.
Man, it's amazing to have you on the show finally. And I want to start off by I want to know, how did you get into the film industry? How did you get into acting? Talk to me a little bit about your origin.
Sure. It's hard to explain in some ways because the industry has changed a lot since I was a kid. I didn't know that the industry itself goes through so many different levels of change. When I was a kid, I did theater. And that was because my parents just pushed me toward doing that kind of stuff. My dad's a guitarist and my mom was a model. She loved musicals. Like, they were both very entertainment industry oriented, but they were more in the music industry because of my dad. And they named me my name because they thought it would be a good stage name, which is pretty funny. So they thought Lou Taylor Pucci would be a good stage name. So here I am. But they pushed me toward doing theater, and I did community theater for about a year and a half, I'd say. I started taking dancing lessons, which I took a lot of shit for at school because they were not excited about having a little short dancer boy as their classmate. And man, it was tough. People just don't get it. I was in New Jersey. New Jersey's kind of if you're growing up, it's sort of like a macho place. Everybody's trying to be macho. They're trying to be like their dads. And it's like, man, could you guys just shut up? I know I'm going to end up doing something cool. So took dancing lessons, did theater. And then in that theater, there was this one little girl. My mom was always like networking for me, which is pretty amazing because I wouldn't have done this otherwise. But she found this one little girl was doing commercials, and she was only like 9. And she asked her mom, my mom asked her mom, hey, how did you guys do that? How did you guys get like representation somehow? And they said, oh, well, we have a manager in New York. Do you want to meet her? And my mom said yes. And so this manager was like, well, I'm not just going to meet anybody. How about you sing to me over the phone and I'll listen to your voice? And I was like, okay. So I'm 10 years old. I'm singing over the phone, like, some ridiculous Oliver song. And she was like, okay, come in. And so we went into New York and met this woman who was a manager, and she signed me after a short interview, and I was 10 years old. I was like 10 or 11 at that point. So in the craziest scenario that is possible, like I don't know how, but I was in the right place at the right time for The Sound of Music in New York, the Broadway show, to open up, which opened up in 1998. I think it was 97 when I was auditioning, but I got the part. I didn't get the main role, which would be Friedrich or Court. I got the understudy part for both of them, which ended up being a lot harder because there's 2 boys in the Von Trapp family. And so they always go to the opposite directions on opposite feet. And then like in every dance. And one of them is a baritone and the other one is a soprano. So you have to be able to sing soprano, baritone, and learn everything on both feet. Like, I'm going to start with my left for this one, and I'm going to start with my right for this one, and be able to go on at any time if either of them got sick, which happened a few times. I had to start in the middle of a theater production. I'm 11 years old. I'm backstage. I'm playing video games. Like, you're just waiting for someone to get sick. It's the weirdest job. And so I'm playing like Rallycross on my PlayStation with a bunch of the other understudies. And then they're like, Ryan's getting sick. He's been puking in the back. We need to get you into makeup. You need to go on in 5 minutes. And that's what I did. You know, like, I was living a weird, very professional life that most people who are on Broadway have like worked really hard for a long time for. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right vocal abilities and everything. And so it started off my whole career, because even though that was about a year and a half that I did that. And then they fired me because I got too tall and because my voice dropped. So like, here I am, 12 and a half, 13 years old, and I'm fired for the first time. And I'm like, I hope this isn't the coolest thing I ever do in my life. And that's really what happened. Was I was really determined to not let that be the only interesting thing that I ever got to do. Because I don't know, to start off that crazy, you really have like a hard hurdle to jump over if you're interested in pursuing that kind of stuff. Because I don't know, it doesn't all last. Your voice does change, and everybody wants somebody who's about, under 20 years old, because they have that youthful look, and they can be in all these movies only for a very short period of time, or all these shows for just a very short period of time. But then once you get older, you enter the giant acting pool, and you're the little fish in the giant bowl, and it just feels like that. And casting treats you different, and you're up against way bigger actors and people who are more experienced, and it's just harder to get a job. So I got in at this time about a year after Sound of Music and everything. I started auditioning again in New York. Didn't get anything for the longest time, but then one feature independent film came up, and it was for a movie called Personal Velocity. And I mean, that's where I learned to act for the first time. I learned like what acting was, because theater is theater, and it doesn't feel real when you're doing a musical. It doesn't feel as real. At least for me, it didn't, because I wasn't playing a part that was very, I was very chipper. I was running around in a sailor suit, you know what I mean? There were other characters who did have to act, but I really wasn't. I was just playing in a musical. I was having fun. And then this audition came up for this tortured character who was a hitchhiker that Fairuza Balk, a great actress, she finds me on the side of the road and takes me to a hotel, and like realizes that I've been tortured and my back is all marked up by whoever's been keeping me as some kind of a slave or something. And it's a really weird movie, but it's a very dark film. And of all the things, Rebecca Miller, who I didn't know anything about at the time, I was like 15 years old, but Rebecca Miller is a director who is one of the true artists of our time. She's pretty nuts. Married to Daniel Day-Lewis. She is the director and also an actor in other films. But so I'm meeting her for the first time in an audition room, and I'm about 15, and I've really never acted. And I wasn't even going to go into this audition because I was like, this is so different than anything I know. How do I do this? Like, it's this character who's biting his nails and like won't look at anybody and is just scared and doesn't talk much. And like, how do you do this? But I think I was so scared to do it that once I got into the audition room, it worked. And Rebecca was just so able to bring it out of me, like to make me feel like this was all real, that I walked out of that audition kind of like feeling like that character and like had tears in my eyes. And it was like kind of this magical moment where I realized what acting was, that acting was actually like tricking yourself into being the character. And then I got that part and I did that movie with her. I got to meet Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, it was a crazy experience, and work with Parker Posey and Fairuza Balk and Kira Sedgwick. And it was like, that was my first introduction to independent film. And then that took 2 years to come out. So here I am in high school, just going like, I'm still trying to cast for things and nobody's picking me. And nobody knows that I've done anything because this movie hasn't come out yet. And then Sundance comes out. Sundance comes up, and we don't know what that is in my family. We had never heard of it. We're like, what's Sundance? I don't know. My dad reads it in the newspaper. He says, Personal Velocity, the movie you did, went to Sundance and won the grand jury prize. I guess that's good. And so here I am, 15, 16 years old, going, I hope that's good for me. What's going to happen? I don't know. And an interviewer from Interview Magazine called up our house and said, hey, we'd like to do in our publication, a little interview with you with like pictures and stuff. Would you come in for a photo shoot and everything? So I'm 16 years old. I'm in high school. I come in for this photo shoot. It ends up being like this really cool spot in their magazine. And the most random thing happens. Like, it's kind of like a fake dream of what people experience, of what they want to experience from Los Angeles or New York. But this one little, article comes out, and within about a month, this agent named Billy Lazarus, and he was at UTA at the time, and he calls our house in New Jersey, like my home, and was like, hey, so I'm an agent and I'd like to represent you, and I'm in Los Angeles. We were like, yeah, right. What? Okay. Ooh, big agent. And I really didn't believe him. My dad didn't believe him. We had gotten a couple people calling the house before that actually were kind of scammers. And so this didn't feel, like anything different. And then he said, no, I seriously, like, do you want me to send you some scripts? And I was like, yeah, I mean, send me some scripts. And then 3 scripts arrived in the mail. And one of them was Thumbsucker, and one of them was Empire Falls, and another one was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a completely different type of character. And I read them all in like a day. And I called him back, and I was like, hey, yeah, I'd like to work with you, I think. But, I have to figure out I really like this script Thumbsucker and this one called Empire Falls a lot. And he was like, okay, well, let's get you to audition for him. I said, how? He said, can you get to Los Angeles? I'd never even been on a plane before in my life. So I went, I got on a plane for the first time. I stayed with the person that he set me up with, which is a new manager, and like everything changed. And I auditioned for Thumbsucker for the first time in the 3 days that I was in Los Angeles. And that audition process, I mean, at that time, I went on about 15 auditions in 3 days. And that is because, they were like trying to sell me big time, because they knew I was only going to be there for 3 days. That we literally told them, if we don't get anything in these 3 days, Lou's going to school to college for editing in New York. And so we're not really going to pursue this unless something happens like crazy right now. So, we scraped together the money to get me to LA. I did all these auditions real fast, and then I went home, and it was a crazy experience. I mean, I met so many people in those 3 days. I had the weirdest experiences with Mike Mills, who made Thumbsucker. He really definitely took a liking to me. I mean, I can tell you that whole story, but it's like a lot. And I've already been talking forever. So anyway, that's how I got into independent film. And that's where it started, from theater, and it transferred to independent film. And at that time, independent film was just blasting off. Everybody was putting money into these films that were anywhere between $2 and $5 million, which is like very rare now. The only way that you find something like that now, I think, is something closer to a Amazon original or a Netflix original. You know what I mean? Like, that's where independent film seems to have gone. I know that there is obviously regular still independent film, actual indie film,
but it's like so much harder to get them financed, and
it's harder to get financed, especially after the recession. Like after the recession of 2008, everything changed and people just weren't financing $2 to $5 million films anymore. They were looking for either something at the 15 range or something at the $250,000 range. And so if you were doing an indie at that after 2008, it was really hard to get paid. It was really hard to like get a job that would pay you anything that would make sense. So that was a big transition that happened. But yeah, that's how I got into it. That long story.
Quite a long version, but it's interesting to hear the like how you started off with theater and then transitioned into cinema. So talk to me a little bit about the roles that you played, like for the majority, like, from what I've seen, you play young men who are like kind of like trying to find their footing in the world, like characters who are kind of like disturbed, like, the ones like even from Spring, Thumbsucker kind of got, I think it put you on the map per se, and then like landed you like the subsequent roles. So talk to me a little bit about like, how do you pick those roles, or do you pick them, or do they come to you?
It's definitely a little bit of both. I have this feeling like if this is how it used to be anyway. I felt a lot like this, especially when there were a lot of independent films coming my way. It was like, first it was a big wave. It was a wave of whatever was happening. I mean, because there was so much happening. I did Thumbsucker, and then right after that, during Thumbsucker, I was auditioning and sending these tapes out, which like on my free time that I did not have, and sending these tapes out, and I got Empire Falls. Also, though, I was also sending tapes out, and one of my tapes for Constantine, you know that movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah.
I think Shia LaBeouf played the part, but
So
I was auditioning for that part.
Oh, okay.
And I had never really done much in my life. I had only done Personal Velocity, and now I was doing Thumbsucker. But I auditioned for Constantine, and I did this ridiculous improv video for them. And apparently it went to the wrong casting directors somehow. And it went to the casting directors who were casting a movie called Chum Scrubber.
Okay.
And so they were like, we have no idea what this audition is, but we think that person who made it is hilarious because this is ridiculous shit. Would he audition for Chum Scrubber? And so apparently that's how I apparently got the audition for that, and then got to be in that movie. So then I did Chum Scrubber right after Empire Falls. So that was like 3 in a row. And I remember going home. I had some time. There was a lot of indies in there that I was doing. I got to work with Richard Linklater. I got to work with on Donnie Darko's second movie, like Southland Tales, and that was like Donnie Darko was. I watched that for the first time during Thumbsucker, and it blew my mind. For a 17-year-old at that time, it just felt like the movie that was made for you, or for me. And all my friends actually from high school felt the same. It was a very big cult film that once we saw it, we were like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I got to work with him and make Southland Tales, which ended up being one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had in my life, for sure. I don't know if you've seen that. Most people have not, but it is so whacked out. This dystopian future, all about strangely like social media, and I mean, The Rock is the main character.
Southland Tales.
Yeah, The Rock is the main character. Sean William Scott plays himself and his own twin. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Just like everyone wanted to be in this movie because the guy who made Donnie Darko was making this movie, and that was it. And it was like, we want to be in this film because if he could make Donnie Darko, then I think we can, like we should be in this next movie. And it bombed. It bombed so bad, unfortunately, but I loved it. I mean, I really thought that there was true genius in there. And I was really enjoying it. We got to go to Cannes with that film. We got to the Cannes Film Festival, or Cannes, I guess you call it. But
yeah, various people call it
wrong. I say everything wrong. I grew up in New Jersey. We have a lot of weird ways to say things.
Well, I still do not know how to pronounce that properly.
I don't know either. If you want to be posh about it, I guess it's Cannes. But for me, it's Cannes. It's Cannes. The Cannes Film Festival. So we got to go to Cannes with that, and Richard Linklater's film, Fast Food Nation. So I got to be there for 2 films. That's why I went. But yeah, like that independent film wave that happened gave me a ton of different characters. And then way later on, when independent film was sort of changing, that's when Spring came about. That was like, it was sort of out of nowhere. It was like, how is this happening? They want to make a film in Italy. It's about a monster. It's a horror movie. Who's going to be the girl? And they didn't know.
Did Spring happen before Evil Dead? Was it shot before Evil Dead, or was it like sometime?
Spring was before Evil Dead, wasn't it? I don't know.
It came out in 2014, though. It came out in 2014, but Evil Dead was 2013.
Yeah, that's a hard one to remember. I actually can't remember. I don't know why. Because what's hard is, I know I didn't want to do a lot of horror because, I don't know, in our business, it's something you can sort of get stuck in a little bit.
Cost as well.
A little bit, yeah. I love horror. I really do. I've always loved it, especially Evil Dead. When I was a kid, I was so into those movies, the original Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. I was such a big fan. Once I saw them in a friend's basement after a party, I was just like, what is this that I'm watching? It's so good. It's so gross and messed up. Like, what is it? And got my friends to watch it, and just was kind of enamored with the world that they created. And then the story behind it, which is that Sam Raimi was like 20 years old, something like that, anywhere between 18 and 21, I think. And Bruce Campbell was young too, and Rob Tapert, one of the producers, and Sam was making it in his garage. Like he was just filming everything he could by himself and like creating all of the effects and everything. So it just seemed like the ultimate indie film that turned into a cult horror film in, what was it, like 79 or something? I can't remember when the original came out, somewhere around there. And then it was so bad, but so good. It was so good, but had such a really bad story. Like it had almost no story, that they came out with Evil Dead 2, which was meant to be funny. Because
like a parody of itself.
Right, because people were already laughing at the original, and so they were like, let's make one that's supposed to be funny, but also really scary and really weird. And I think Bruce Campbell going crazy in Evil Dead 2 is, I think, one of my favorite acting moments like ever. And he was a clown. I learned, like, he went to clown school. He actually learned clowning. Yes. Oh, wow. And that's why he's so good at physical improv and physical comedy. But so then, Evil Dead came around as an audition. And I mean, they were remaking a lot of films at that time when Evil Dead came around to my doorstep.
Surprisingly, this was one of those movies where you think it's not going to be good, and then it exceeds your expectations, because this shit was so scary, man.
I agree with you. And that's because of the director. But so the story behind it is that I went to the audition begrudgingly because I did not want to go. I was like, I don't want to be a part of ruining something from my past that's so good, because so many of these films really do suck when they reboot them or when they reshoot them or whatever you want to call it. And so I didn't want to do a remake of Evil Dead. I thought that that would ruin my childhood in some way. And so I begrudgingly went to the audition, but the casting director was someone who had cast me before, and they convinced the director to see me again, because even though my audition was not that good for the first one, they were like, but he's really good, trust us. So I got to go to the second audition, and the second audition was with Bruce Campbell. He was in the audition. That's how they got me to go. I was like, I don't know if I should go to this. I don't know if I should do it. And they said, well, Bruce Campbell will be there. I said, okay, I'll be there. But when? Let's do it. Should I read the script this time? Like, I had no idea. So I went to this audition and got to walk into a room with Bruce Campbell and the director and the producer or a casting director, and the director's name is Fede Alvarez, and he's from Uruguay. And what an interesting person he is. I mean, just like he had never made a feature before, but meeting him, he was one of the most professional people I had ever met. He was like just born to do this. Anyway, so I see Bruce Campbell sitting there, and I'm like, I have to audition for Bruce Campbell right now. This is so cool. So I do the part. The best part is I walk into the room, and the first thing that Bruce Campbell says is, hey, just wanted you to know, you know, despite your audition, it doesn't really matter. You got the part. You have the part. It's all you. And I was like,
for real?
Are you fucking with me right now? And he goes, yeah, yes, I am. I'm fucking with you. I was like, you dick. Wow. But it was very nice because it did open up like laughter into the room, and we just got to like feel like we were hanging out. And so then I did the audition, which was a pretty serious audition with like, you know, kind of tears coming down your face. Oh, I'm going to kill my best friend and all this stuff. It was terrible. And I walked out of there like, I have no idea if that worked or not, but I did everything they wanted me to. And they called me and said, you got Evil Dead. I was like, wow, this is so cool, because now that I know Bruce Campbell is involved, I know that he will not let this thing go to shit. There's just no way. And it turned out that that was the exact experience. He was a part of this thing every step of the way, but he also knew how to get out of the way of Fede, the new director. Also, Sam Raimi did the same. They did not want to impinge on his directing and try to control anything. They already vetted him. They knew he wrote this script, this screenplay. He, rewrote it and everything, and came up with this original version where she's detoxing in the woods, and that's why they're in the woods. So there was an actual motivation for this one, and they made this really cool idea. But Bruce Campbell, I mean, even in what we call, what ADR is? It's audio. It's like the after audio stuff. So whenever you're putting, just for the audience, whenever you're putting narration in, or if you have to clean anything up because there was sound that was over something else, you have to do ADR afterward. And I went into the ADR rooms, and Bruce Campbell just happened to be like in there. I was like, what is Bruce Campbell doing in that room over there? And they said, oh, he's searching the original Evil Dead for audio clips that he likes from the original to try and put into the new one. Oh. I was like, what? That's what Bruce Campbell is doing right now? He loves this. I mean, he loves this movie. So I was just blown away by his level of commitment to making this a great movie. And that's probably why it did turn out to be, partially. That's why it became so good. But truthfully, Fede Alvarez really, really did some insane work on this thing.
He nailed it, yeah.
Yeah, he nailed it.
Talk to me a little bit about like what type of directors do you prefer working with? Like actors, directors, or auteurs, or like what Okay, let me rephrase that. What
No, it's
kind
a
of
good
direction
question.
from? Yeah, sorry. You can go on and answer that because my next question is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah. I don't think that I think I worked with a lot of writer directors, and most of the time when you're making an independent film, it ends up being with a writer director. That's just because it takes so much to make an independent film that they have to work forever to get it made, and so they attach, you know, themselves in some way to it. But most of the time, it's to tell the story. So I worked with a ton of them, and I loved it. And I thought that that was kind of, I mean, that's, to me, it feels so much more like an art piece, like a full art piece. Like, you know, if you look at a painting and you see a Van Gogh, it's because Van Gogh painted it. It's not like Van Gogh thought of it and somebody else painted it. It's he painted it. So that's what it feels like to make a movie where the writer is the director. And I loved that feeling because it felt like a full artistic experience from that person's head onto the screen. It doesn't always work out. You know, some people are great at writing and okay directors. Some people are okay writers, okay directors, and great editors. You know what I mean? Like everybody's, that's all those parts make up the film, and the editing of a film can totally change it as well. It can ruin it or it can make it incredible. So some directors were really good at that, and some were not. I guess what it is, it's like a grab bag. You don't really know what you're getting, because are they going to be amazing at all three of those things? And casting, you know, like having a good taste in who they're casting. Or is it possible that one of those is going to fail or fall short? And I've had a lot of different experiences with a lot of different people, and sometimes what you make is not what it turns out to be, and that's good, and sometimes it's bad. but I think working with people who wrote it is my favorite in general, because it's the most close to a thing that you can possibly get as an actor, because they are the closest to it as well. Right now I'm working on something where, even though the writer is not directing it, she is the showrunner for it. So she's there
physical?
at all times. Yeah, it's physical.
Okay.
Her name's Annie Weissman, and Annie is, I mean, it's nice to be able to ask any question that you need and say, why is this? Or, you know, because she wrote this about her life, about things she saw in San Diego at that time, not about her life specifically, but it's all come from her experience. And so it's nice to have her on set, even though we have directors who are, you know, just people just hired to do this, to do the same thing I'm doing, to just make this movie. So it's very different that way, but it's really nice for physical that we have someone that we can constantly ask all the questions to if we have them. If you don't have that, it gets a little weird. Like, here's a good one. So I made a movie called Informers, that's written by Bret Easton Ellis, and he wrote the book Informers, which is basically a sequel to Less Than Zero. And so we made this movie, but it was during the recession in 2008 was pretty much at the same time as the writers' strike of Screen Actors Guild, or I mean the writers, whatever
the
you call
Guild.
it.
Yeah.
So they were striking. The SAG actors were striking later. I think they struck right after or right before. I can't remember. It was such a weird time. Everything was going bad. It was kind of like the whole entertainment industry felt like it was falling apart.
Yeah, there were so many movies that were affected by that.
Yes, and shows and crew members who weren't working for 9 months or something like that, and not being able to, you know, feed their families. It was a bad time for entertainment. But I somehow was making this independent film during that, and we were making it in Argentina, like in South America, because they thought it would be cheaper, and it wasn't. They really messed that one up, because they thought that they could just have everybody work for the prices that you would in Argentina, but work at American hour levels, which is like really intense work, 14 to 18-hour days sometimes. And they, you know, the crew mutinied on this movie. The crew was like, absolutely not. We're not coming in. You either pay us better or we have to have a life, you know? And the American directors and producer were like, life, this is our life. Our life is work. You know what I mean? Because that's how it's treated here. Very, very different. And the crew was just not having it. And I agree with them. They shouldn't have been. So we made this movie called Informers. And because of the writer's strike, I was not allowed to talk to Bret Easton Ellis, the writer, who, and I mean, he made American Psycho. He's written some of the coolest books and stories and most shocking, scary shit that I have ever seen or read.
So did you find like that affected or hindered your performance or what you could give out in?
It was going to, but instead I badgered enough people and I got to talk to him anyway, and it was all under the table.
Wow.
And so nobody knew about it, but I got to be on a phone call with him, even though he couldn't be there on set. He really wanted to be. He gave me like about half hour or 45 minutes of just like talking about the character with me, and it really helped a lot because I was playing a version of himself. He wrote himself into Less Than Zero, and I was playing him, this kid named Tim. And so I really wanted to know, like, where does this really come from? And it helped an insane amount. So
having that sort of backstory, like even though it's not necessarily written or shown in the screenplay in the movie, you know, that obviously, you know, helps you kind of like formulate an idea about like what this character has been through and like where every single motivation is coming from.
When it's real to someone,
Exactly.
when it's real to someone, it makes you understand it better, I think.
And thereby elicits like a better performance out of the actor, whoever it is.
Yeah, for me, I think it just made me understand better where they're coming from and like how this is a real character. Because that's the thing you can get into is you can start making cartoons, like characterizations of a person that you are playing rather than rather than just being the person. And there has to be a little bit. I've learned in my now wise years that you have to see this hair, very old.
It's almost gray.
Yeah, that you have to have a certain level of fun with what you're doing. When I was young and I was making those independent films, I was having a good time backstage. But you know, once we were on camera, I was all professional, I was all focused, and it was very, very serious. It was all very important, and it is all very important. But if you don't remember to have fun, something's missing. And
how do you balance that?
Well, you have to try and have fun with what you're doing, and also realize that you're not making a documentary about a real person that you're being. You can be a person, be a character, and truly be them, and it might not be very interesting. And so in some cases, you do have to choose the more epic choice, the more interesting choice for people to watch. And that's, I think that the more cinematic choice is how you make something fun sometimes now. That's how I feel anyway, is that in mixing those two worlds where you're not just being a cartoon and a characterization, but you're exaggerating the truth a little bit in order to make the story more interesting, it works. And it's more fun and it's more challenging than just being a person. If you're going to have somebody like document a year of your life, sure, you're going to come up with, it's going to look great. Like you're going to be able to edit that down to 1.5 hours of awesome. But if you're just making a month-long independent film and having people follow you around, you're going to seem pretty boring if you're just being you all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's just, there's a lot of dead space in there. So coming up with a middle ground where you integrate the more cinematic choice is something I learned later in life. It's not something I really knew ahead of time. I think, honestly, around the time of Evil Dead, that's when I was realizing that I had to have fun, and that I think the audience can see it in your eyes, that they can feel it when you're it's like exciting to watch someone having a good time and know that they're enjoying themselves somehow. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does.
But
does it happen with like, like you keep on practicing and eventually get good at something, or does it happen through like, watching more movies and seeing how other performers put it out, or maybe seeing your colleagues act on set, like, or is it like a combination of all of those things?
I feel like for me, it's different for everybody. Some people don't like watching movies and they're great actors. Some people don't like watching themselves and they're great actors. And I do like watching myself because it makes me understand what I could do better. And I love watching movies. The reason specifically, though, that I like them is because it's kind of like an index. It's like a Rolodex of all the characters that you could take a little piece of. I mean, for American Psycho, you can watch that movie and you can take apart Christian Bale's facial expressions in that movie and see what he was doing in his head. And I mean, you can do that for almost all his movies because he's an incredible actor, but it's an index of all the characters that are possible. And so
it's like
it helps
reverse
you.
engineering the inner monologue that's going on in these actors' heads while watching it.
It is, and it's also just coming up with, wow, I've never seen that before. I could take a piece of that and make it my own version of the same thing. Gotcha. Like I could do my very bad impression of Christian Bale in American Psycho, and it wouldn't maybe even look like I was doing an impression. It would just be my version of the same thing, and it would have to get integrated into my own being in my own head somehow. But just thinking of that character that he played could be such an inspiration that it makes you feel like you could be doing almost the same thing, but people wouldn't necessarily notice because it's then it's filtered through you.
Yeah.
And a little piece of you is going to get connected to that thing. And so I love watching films because it gives me more ideas for what I can do.
Do you ever go method, or is your process?
Oh yeah, I did. A couple. I mean, for Thumbsucker, I did, because I didn't know any other way, and that's what I mean by being very serious and very like.
So how long were you sucking your thumb for, man?
Yeah, I sucked my thumb as a kid until I was 7 years old. So I actually did that. So I knew, very realistically, how that affected my life. And it was kind of shameful after a certain point. Like people wanted to shame you into stopping, and that was, how it did make me stop. But Thumbsucker was so interesting because the director Mike Mills had such a really cool way of making me feel like usually an actor has to figure out how to trick themselves into being the character.
Yeah.
But Mike Mills had experiments he wanted me to do where that would trick me into feeling like the character. One of them was that he wanted me to put a big piece of duct tape around my thumb. Mm-hmm. And anytime anyone asked me about what it was, this is before we're even rehearsing. This is before I get to Oregon and we rehearse. This is like at home. I had about a month and a half before we were going to film. And he said, put this big duct tape around your thumb. And whenever anybody asks you about your thumb, you have to lie why the duct tape is there. You have to come up with a different reason. And it will show you what you would have to do if somebody had this thing, you know what I mean? This thumb that they were ashamed of, and someone asked you about it and you constantly had to lie, and what that would make you feel like. And then he said, I also want you to go into a public place once a day and find a spot where you hope you won't be seen and suck your thumb for like 5 minutes. I was like, okay. I was in grocery stores. Like, it was strange, but it really worked, and it made you feel very much what you like, that this thing was a deficit, like was a problem, and it really made you ashamed of it, which is crazy. But see, those techniques, like those ideas, they're totally original, interesting ideas. Like I watched that documentary about Val Kilmer just recently, and he said in the death scene in Tombstone, he was in an ice bed. He told the director, I want to feel like I'm dying, and so could you put ice in the bed? And so the entire scene, he's in a bed of ice, and that's so cool to think that that's how he tricked his body into feeling like it was dying and truly wanted to be in that place, feeling like that whole time, which must have been torture.
So having said that, and like even with your experiences, like this is something that I've heard, like someone tell me that every single person in the world has lied to somebody else, and the receiving party has believed it. So if someone can lie convincingly, do you think that they can act? That anyone can act?
I do think that anyone can act 100%. I think that one of the funniest things that happened to me when I was a kid was I was acting, but none of my friends were, right? All my friends they were like theater stage crew people from my high school. And once they invited me to a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I went and I was like, what is it? What is Dungeons and Dragons? No one can tell me. No one ever tells me what it is. Is it a board game? What is it? So I went there and to one of my friends' basements, and we're hanging out in there. And I just realized, like, here they are all acting. They didn't even know it. They never thought of it like that. But they were all playing like, I'm playing a mage at level 7 who, shoots magic missiles, and you know what I mean? And they were acting like these characters that they had created the personalities of. And I was like, these people are acting right now. And they don't even know it. It's just pretend. It's just going, it's like allowing yourself to be another person. And I think most people, unless, well, I don't even know what to say about that. I would say anybody with empathy can do it, but also sociopaths are the best actors. So I don't even know. I guess anyone with or without empathy. So I'm going to go with, like, pretty much anybody can do it. It's more about the performing of it. That's the hard part. Like, you can feel like another person and you can think like another person, but can you do it on command? That's the only hard part. That's the part that most people don't want to try. True. Because it's in front of other people or whatever. But I think that everybody can act. Yeah.
And what about, so when you are on set, you need to be able to hit your mark properly, deliver the emotional beats, and also have some sort of an awareness of where the camera is. Like, a lot of things to balance, like.
And there are some actors who really don't want to think about that at all. And that would be your more method people most of the time, I think. But there's an integration between that as well, where they want to not think about it, but they do know it's there and they know where it is. You know what I mean? They just don't want to think about it. Or you have the people who are just saying, am I in my light? Am I in the light? Like, do I feel it? And they're just constantly about all the technical pieces. And then they can just, it's like they find their boundaries for the scene and then they just forget it and turn it off and do the scene. Now knowing all the boundaries that they have, where they can walk and where they can stand. And I think that's kind of more what I do now, is that I'll take the rehearsal to find out all the technical issues and then actually get to act it out, once we start filming.
Gotcha.
And trying very hard to forget that camera is there. And a lot of times I look straight into it. I do. A lot of times, once you forget the camera is there, you end up going, "Oh shit!" I just looked at it. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to cut. Because sometimes it does feel like another eye in the room. So even
That's
if you're
true.
just wandering around, you could like it. Oh shit! You're. It's so funny.
We have a question here from the audience. Did you have any bad experiences that, though they were bad at the time, helped you in the long run?
Ooh, a lot of them. I think that you learn way more from your mistakes than you learn from your good experiences. The good experiences, you just kind of go, okay, I know everything. And the bad experiences, you go, all right, I gotta start from scratch. I gotta say, what the hell happened here? And I gotta build back from the root and figure out what I'm doing wrong. So I think there's a ton of them that I could talk about, bad experiences. But I mean, sometimes there are bad ones inside of good ones. There's a lot of experiences I've had that could be considered bad, but it's hard to talk about something being bad when you learn a lot from it. You know what I mean? I think that most of the time it's just a learning experience no matter what you're doing. It's just that it's weird with our job because after the fact is when we actually get to see the finished product. And it's so far after the fact that it almost feels like it was another time. It was another world, another dimension when you used to be this other person and they were filming that. So I can't really come up with like what was the most learning experience, what was the most bad experience that I had, but there's a ton of options out there. I've made some movies that are good and I've made some stinkies.
But it's all part of the whole learning process.
It is. And I definitely learned more from the stinkers. I did.
I am yet to watch you because, there's so much content these days,
Oh, yeah.
But it's been on my list and you are in the first three episodes.
Yeah, I look very different.
You do. I kind of saw like a few screenshots and I was like, okay.
I did not have long hair at all and barely a beard, but it was so fun. I mean, that was the next phase of acting for me. Was after 2008 and the recession. It was really I was still trying to cling to independent films, try to find the diamond in the rough. Like, hey, they'll still be out there because that's what I love doing. When the industry was turning to television. And I didn't realize it because television when I was a kid was just completely different. I mean, it was like, Facts of Life, Three's Company, like Family Matters, like that's what I was watching. Stuff that was on TV it was sitcoms and it was not good. Now you have like, Physical, you have Sopranos, you have like the most amazing content you could possibly have is on TV now. And it turned from being the B-list thing to do to the A-list thing to do. Which has changed everything. Wait, I forgot your original question. I lost myself in a tangent.
I was just like, I didn't really ask you a question. I was just like talking about you.
Okay, so you was just the last phase of this thing where I got to finally be in television because I had finally accepted the fact that TV was really, really good and way better than it used to be. And being a part of that TV show really, it took me into the next level of my being able to act in really good parts, to find these roles that people were giving out on TV, which there are many because all these platforms have exclusive content and they need to have their own shows to bring people in to subscribe. So there's so many new shows constantly on TV that for an actor right now, it is kind of a bit of a paradise if you can get on one. That's the whole game at this point, is get on a TV show or be guest stars. And that's what I did. I just I went from guest star role to guest star role to guest star role in You, and then
American Horror Story.
American Horror Story was the next big one, but I got to do a show called You're the Worst in the middle there, and Younger, and so it was a slow burn for me. It felt kind of like, you know, I didn't know if this was happening or not. Was I being accepted into the TV club or not? But finally, once physical happened, this is an actor's dream. In so many ways, doing physical is an actor's dream, because I'm not the main character, so I don't have to work so hard. Because Rose Byrne, she has to be on there every day, working her ass off. She's got kids, you know what I mean? Like, how does she balance her life and be able to be the main character in almost every single scene of this television show, filming 10 episodes at a time? Somehow keeping in her head the chronology of where we are in filming, because we're not doing it chronologically. So, you know, keeping your character's arc, it's like making a giant movie, a giant 10-hour film, and having all that stuff in your head. I don't have to do that, which is great. I get to come in and say my funny stuff and walk away. That's how I feel, compared to the many other really intense shows and movies that I've done, where I've played characters that you really have to be massively intricately figuring out the chronology and inner workings and making sure you're on the right spot and everything. Tyler is he's so chill, and most of the time he's not going through a lot of hardship. He's just kind of like, he's going through his own hardship, but it's just like, oh man, I can't surf today. Damn, man. You know, so it's just so much more fun in the way that I get to truly be a version of myself and not be encumbered by all the technical stuff. So this is an actor's dream in that way, but it's also an actor's dream because it's what's called a season regular. And so that means that I will be most likely in all of the episodes. And it's just nice to have that as part of your life, because you know you have a job, which that stability of having a job for the first time as an actor who's been doing it for 20-something years, it's very new. It's a very nice feeling. And I think that's what most people end up wanting to do over time, is have something that's stable in your career, you know, just as you get older. So now that I'm an old man, I'm very happy.
You got a ways to go, bro. You got a ways to go.
Yeah, I know.
As a final point, just, you know, talk to me a little bit about the whole resilience that you need, because acting, all the, you know, you might have Brando's skill, but making that big break, that's not easy. Like, there are so many waitresses in LA.
I know a lot of people who I feel like could be great actors, but would not have the persistence, or really it's the ability to not have the stability. It's the being able to cope with not having a job most of the time, and being able to somehow still challenge yourself or live the life that you want to live while on the side constantly searching for more work. That is a tricky business, because if you're working in an office or something, you're on a track. You might be promoted if you work hard, and you might move to another company, or someone might take away, but pretty much you're staying on the same track. And so you can have faith in that job that you have. It's very hard to have faith in this job because you're pretty much just having faith in yourself and saying, it's going to happen. It's going to work. If you're talented, people are going to hire you. And so that's what I've been doing for many, many years, is going like, it's going to happen. I think I'm good at this. And I think that people will hire me if I just keep going out for things. But we'll see. And so it is really hard to be persistent and to take all of all the negatives with it, because people are saying no, next, next, and you
Yeah.
think you did a great job. You think that you like really figured it out, or you worked really hard on that audition, and then people don't want you. I mean, even for the show I went in for the main character, for Joe, and I think that they saw that I was good and liked me for it, but they were like, he's not Joe. There's no way he's Joe. So I just left that thing, and I heard nothing. And they said, and I was just like, shit, that sucks. Like, man, I really liked this part, and the show seems so well written and everything. And so here they're just chalk it up to another audition that you hear nothing from. And then 30 days went by, and they were like, would you audition again for a different character? And you know that when they do that they really like you for a part. That if you don't mess up, you might actually get this, because they're already thinking of you for a different character. And so that means that they liked you already, and that they like you for a different character. So you're way in. All you have to do is not mess up. So I went into that audition, and I ended up getting the part of the, bad guy, which was so much more fun.
You get stuck inside a plexiglass.
Oh
room
yeah,
sort of thing.
I get tortured for days. It's fantastic. But yeah, it was. I think I have to head out pretty soon.
We gotta wrap it up too. But Lou, thank you so much for joining and sharing all these amazing experiences.
Oh yeah, I had so much fun, man. Thank you so much for contacting me and finding me and waiting for me to have that time, because it's been a weird time. You contacted me way before I even shot physical, I'm pretty sure. I mean, which
really?
was it.
Okay.
I think that originally, yeah, but maybe I don't.
I've lost track of time, man.
I know, me too. It's been a while. I said contact me in September, and then you did. So it worked out, which is super nice of you to wait. So thank you so much, because it was really nice to be on here. And if I can leave anyone with anything, I would say, if you want to be an actor, don't have too direct of an idea of what you want to do in this business. Just go into the business. Like, be a producer, or be a cinematographer, or be an editor, or whatever it is going to further you into what you want. This industry is huge, and it takes so many people to build the puzzle of making a TV show or making a movie. And you could start as one thing and end up as something completely different. So a lot of people go into acting because that's the only thing they want to do. I just want to be an actor. But they have talents that are completely different than that. And they could end up being an actor by being that editor for a while, or being that cinematographer and gaining the networking, connections that they gain and everything. And so I just feel like follow your bliss, but also follow what you're good at, and it will lead to what you want. That's about it.
Wise words. I guess it's the age and the graying locks.
Yeah, it's probably because I'm Gandalf now. Gandalf the White. The Bell Rock.
You shall not pass.
You shall not pass.
Lou, thank you so much for those words of wisdom, man. Seriously, that was amazing. And I hope everyone got something out of this. So till next time, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.